Elena Marquez had always been exactly what the security company overlooked. At 33, she cleaned the high-security government building with a precision that went unnoticed by executives rushing past. Her observations were flawless. Her understanding of the building's rhythms unmatched. But none of that mattered to Security Director William Reynolds. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena first noticed something was wrong during her third month at the Washington Federal Complex. She had just finished polishing the executive floor, still focused on the strange pattern of late-night meetings, when she heard urgent whispers from the supposedly empty conference room. She expected the usual: politicians having affairs or making backroom deals. Instead, she heard phrases like timed detonation and maximum casualties. She hesitated outside the door, mop in hand, torn between reporting what she'd heard and keeping her head down. The cleaning staff had been explicitly instructed to see nothing, hear nothing, especially someone like her, who many assumed couldn't fully understand English despite her flawless command of the language. Elena had graduated with honors in chemistry before a family crisis derailed her career plans, but her current employers saw only the uniform, not the mind behind it. As the voices grew louder, Elena quietly moved her cart further down the hallway, pretending to focus on a stubborn floor stain. The conference room door opened, and 3 men emerged. 2 wore expensive suits that matched the government officials she cleaned for daily. The third man was different, dressed casually but with an intensity that made Elena instinctively lower her gaze. "Everything is set for next week's event," one suit said. "The ambassador won't know what hit him." The casual man nodded. "Just make sure the cleaning staff is gone by 6. We don't need witnesses." "They're invisible anyway," the second suit laughed. "Half of them don't even speak English." Elena felt her cheeks burn as she scrubbed harder at the imaginary stain. 8 years of education, a degree with honors, and fluency in 3 languages reduced to invisible. The men walked past without a glance, as though she were merely another piece of furniture. That night, in her small apartment across town, Elena replayed the conversation. The references to detonation, the ambassador, the timing, it all pointed to something potentially catastrophic. She thought about reporting it to her supervisor, Marcus Jenkins, who had always treated the cleaning staff with respect, but something held her back. This wasn't just about suspicious behavior. These were high-ranking officials in a secure government building. Accusations without proof would cost her job at best and her freedom at worst. Who would believe the word of a cleaner against government officials? Instead, she decided to keep her eyes open and gather information. Elena had one advantage: her invisibility. The same dismissive attitude that stung her pride also meant people spoke freely around her, as though she weren't even there. The next day, Elena adjusted her cleaning schedule. She normally avoided the high-security floors until they emptied for the night, but now she volunteered for daytime detail, moving methodically through the building while keeping her ears open for any further mention of the ambassador or the event. In the third-floor bathroom, she overheard 2 administrative assistants discussing the upcoming International Peace Summit. "The ambassador from Morocco is the keynote speaker," one said. "Security is going to be insane." On the 5th floor, a harried event coordinator was arguing with facilities management about room arrangements. The ambassador specifically requested the Grand Hall for his address. "I don't care about the security complications." By the end of her shift, Elena had confirmed that the Moroccan ambassador would be speaking at the International Peace Summit in exactly 1 week, in the building's Grand Hall, the same building where men had discussed detonations and casualties. That evening, Elena approached Marcus as he was reviewing the next day's assignments. At 45, Marcus had worked security before an injury forced him into management. He ran the cleaning staff with military efficiency, but genuine concern for their well-being. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something I overheard," Elena began, keeping her voice low. Marcus looked up, his expression weary. "Elena, we've discussed this. The cleaning staff isn't supposed to report on conversations unless there's an immediate security threat." "I think there might be," she said. "I heard men discussing detonations timed for the ambassador's visit next week." Marcus's expression shifted from weariness to concern, then skepticism. "Are you sure? Those exact words?" Yes. They specifically mentioned the cleaning staff being gone and not wanting witnesses. He studied her face for a moment. Did you recognize any of these men? 2 were wearing government badges. The third wasn't staff. Marcus sighed. I'll look into it. But Elena, be careful about making accusations. These are powerful people, and misunderstandings happen. She recognized the dismissal in his tone. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I said I'll look into it. In the meantime, stick to your assigned areas and schedules. As she walked away, Elena felt frustration building. Even Marcus, who respected her more than most, was hesitant to take her concerns seriously. She considered going directly to the building's head of security, but without proof, she'd likely face the same skepticism. Or worse. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Images of the ambassador's speech being interrupted by violence kept flashing through her mind. By morning, she had made a decision that would change everything. She would gather evidence herself. Over the next 3 days, Elena implemented her plan. She volunteered for extra shifts, focusing on areas near the Grand Hall. She carried a small notebook disguised as a cleaning log, documenting suspicious activities and conversations. She memorized the names on security badges, the times when certain officials entered restricted areas, the patterns of activity that seemed out of place. On the 4th day, her persistence paid off. While cleaning an executive restroom, she found a crumpled note in the trash. Most cleaners would have disposed of it without a second thought, but Elena carefully smoothed it out. The paper contained what appeared to be a partial schematic, with technical notations about timing mechanisms and locations marked around the Grand Hall's podium area. Her heart racing, Elena slipped the paper into her pocket. This was the evidence she needed. But who could she trust with it? As she pushed her cart back into the hallway, she nearly collided with William Reynolds, the building's director of security. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, barely looking at her as he straightened his impeccable suit. "I'm sorry, sir," Elena murmured, keeping her head down as she'd learned to do around executives. Reynolds was already walking away when he paused and turned back. "You're not usually on this floor during day shift." The observation sent a chill through Elena. Reynolds had actually noticed her schedule, which meant he paid more attention to the cleaning staff than most. "Extra coverage for the summit preparations, sir," she answered, gesturing to her cart. "Marcus assigned me." Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. "Make sure you're finished by 4. This section will be sealed for security sweeps after that." "Yes, sir. Of course." As he walked away, Elena felt her pulse quicken. Reynolds had never spoken directly to any of the cleaning staff before, as far as she knew. The fact that he'd not only noticed her but questioned her presence was alarming. That afternoon, Elena approached Marcus again, this time with the schematic. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his expression grave as he studied the paper. "Executive restroom trash. 4th floor." Marcus looked up at her, conflict evident in his eyes. "Elena, this is beyond what we're equipped to handle. I need to take this to building security." "To Reynolds?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "He's the director of security. Who else would I take it to?" Elena hesitated. "I'm not sure we can trust him." Marcus set the paper down. "That's a serious accusation against the head of security for a federal building. What exactly are you suggesting?" "I don't know yet," Elena admitted. "But he specifically questioned why I was cleaning on the executive floor today. He knows my schedule shouldn't include that area. He's the security director. Knowing staff movements is his job. Then why tell me to be gone by 4 for security sweeps when the standard protocol is 6? Marcus frowned. "You're reaching, Elena. Reynolds is a decorated former federal agent with 20 years of service. You're a cleaner who overheard a conversation you might have misinterpreted." The words stung, even though Elena knew Marcus hadn't meant them to. "So you won't help?" "I didn't say that," Marcus sighed. "I'll make some discreet inquiries, verify the summit schedule, and review the security protocols. But I'm not going to accuse the security director based on a piece of trash and an overheard conversation. Elena nodded, understanding his position even as frustration threatened to overwhelm her. Thank you. That's all I'm asking. But as she left Marcus's office, she knew it wasn't enough. The summit was now just 3 days away, and she had evidence of a potential attack that no one seemed willing to take seriously. That evening, Elena made a decision that could cost her job or worse. Instead of leaving at the end of her shift, she hid her cleaning cart in a rarely used supply closet and tucked herself into an adjacent maintenance room. The night security patrol passed by twice, but the room's designation as mechanical space meant they only checked the door was locked without looking inside. At midnight, the building was nearly empty except for minimal security personnel. Elena slipped out and made her way to the security office, where she knew the surveillance system was controlled. She had no experience with security systems, but she did have an intimate knowledge of the building's layout, including which rooms were monitored and which weren't. The security office door required a key card, but Elena had observed that the ventilation maintenance panel beside it opened into the same space. It would be a tight fit, but she could make it. 20 minutes later, Elena was inside the security office, carefully searching through files labeled for the upcoming summit. What she found confirmed her worst fears. The official security plans showed standard protocols, but a separate folder contained modified versions with key differences. Reduced perimeter checks in specific areas, staff reassignments that created coverage gaps, and most alarmingly, a maintenance schedule that would disable certain security cameras for system updates during the ambassador's speech. As Elena photographed the documents with her phone, she heard voices approaching. She barely had time to slide the folders back into place and duck beneath the desk before the door opened. "Everything's proceeding as planned," came Reynolds' voice. "The device will be in place tomorrow night, well before the final security sweep." "And the ambassador?" asked a second voice, one Elena recognized from the conference room days earlier. "His security team has approved all our protocols. They suspect nothing." "What about the cleaning woman, the one you mentioned?" Elena felt her blood freeze. "Handled," Reynolds replied. "She's been reassigned to a different building effective tomorrow. If she's noticed anything, she won't be in a position to interfere." The conversation continued, but Elena could barely focus through the pounding of her heart. They knew about her. Somehow they knew she suspected something. After the men left, Elena waited another 30 minutes before slipping out the way she had come in. Her mind raced with implications. Reynolds was definitely involved, which meant going to building security was out of the question. Marcus might believe her now, but evidence obtained by breaking into the security office would more likely result in her arrest than any action against the conspirators. As she retrieved her cart and made her way toward the staff exit, Elena realized she was truly on her own. She had less than 48 hours to stop an attack that would kill the Moroccan ambassador, and potentially dozens of others, with no one to help and conspirators who already suspected her. The weight of the situation threatened to crush her. She was just a cleaner, someone people overlooked and underestimated. What could she possibly do against professional killers with government connections? For a moment, standing in the dark hallway clutching her phone with its damning evidence, Elena considered walking away. She could delete the photos, accept her transfer, and pretend she'd never heard anything. The temptation was powerful. But then she thought about the ambassador, a man who, according to the news coverage she'd researched, had dedicated his life to peace initiatives in conflict regions. She thought about the ordinary people who would be attending the summit, the colleagues who would be working that day. She couldn't walk away. As she pushed through the staff exit into the cool night air, Elena made a decision. If no one would listen to a cleaner, then perhaps they would listen to someone else. She needed to find a way to be heard, and she needed to do it before tomorrow night. What she didn't realize was that her actions had already set forces in motion that would test everything she thought she knew about herself. The next 48 hours would transform her from an overlooked cleaner into someone unforgettable. But first, she would have to survive the night. By the time Elena reached her apartment, it was nearly 3 a.m. The streets had been eerily empty, and twice she'd been certain someone was following her. She double-locked her door and wedged a chair beneath the handle before collapsing onto her couch, mind still racing. Her phone contained evidence of a conspiracy involving the security director of a federal building, evidence she'd obtained illegally. Going to the police would likely result in her arrest rather than action against Reynolds. The FBI might take her seriously, but would they act quickly enough on the word of a cleaner with no connections or credibility? As exhaustion pulled at her, Elena made one final decision before allowing herself a few hours of rest. Come morning, she would reach out to the one person who had shown her genuine respect and might have the connections to help. Marcus Jenkins. Elena woke with a start to pounding on her door. Sunlight streamed through her blinds. She had overslept. The pounding came again, followed by a voice. "Elena! Open up! It's Marcus!" Relief flooded through her as she moved the chair and unlocked the door. Marcus stood in the hallway looking disheveled, his normally neat appearance rumpled as though he'd been up all night. "Thank God," he said, pushing inside and quickly closing the door behind him. "I've been trying to call you for hours." "My phone," Elena realized, reaching for where she'd left it charging. The battery was dead. She'd forgotten to plug it in properly in her exhausted state. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice grave. "You were right about everything." Marcus paced Elena's small living room, his movements tense as he explained what had happened after she left his office the previous day. "I took your concerns to my supervisor, not Reynolds directly," he said. Showed him the schematic without mentioning where it came from. He dismissed it immediately. Said it was probably just notes from the renovation planning. But something felt off about his reaction. Elena plugged in her phone, waiting anxiously for it to power up so she could show him the photos. "So I did some digging," Marcus continued. "Called a buddy who works embassy security. Asked about the Moroccan ambassador's protection detail. Standard protocols. What I learned didn't match what's been implemented at our building." "They're creating security gaps," Elena said, relieved that someone finally believed her. "Exactly. But here's where it gets worse." Marcus lowered his voice despite them being alone. "This morning, I was called into a meeting with Reynolds. He informed me that due to quote, budget adjustments, 5 members of the cleaning staff were being reassigned effective immediately. You were at the top of the list." Elena's phone finally lit up. "Marcus, I have more. Last night I—" "Don't tell me," he interrupted, holding up his hand. "The less I know about how you got information, the better. What matters is what you found." She showed him the photos of the modified security plans. Marcus studied them, his expression darkening with each swipe. "This is beyond what I imagined," he said finally. "This isn't just a lone extremist. This is coordinated from inside the building's security apparatus." "Can we go to the FBI?" Elena asked. Marcus shook his head. "Reynolds has connections there. We'd need to be careful about who we approach. But there's something else you should know." He hesitated. "Your apartment was searched this morning." Elena felt her blood run cold. "How do you know?" "Because I was asked to provide your address for employment verification. I gave them the wrong building number, but that won't slow them for long. They're looking for you, Elena." The implication was clear. They knew she had discovered something. "We need to move," Marcus said, already heading toward her bedroom. "Pack only what you absolutely need. We have maybe 15 minutes before they figure out the address discrepancy." Elena grabbed a backpack and threw in essentials. A change of clothes, her identification, the cash she kept for emergencies. Marcus made a call while she packed, speaking in hushed tones to someone he apparently trusted. "My brother-in-law has a cabin about 2 hours from the city," he explained as she emerged with her backpack. "No one associated with work knows about it. You'll be safe there while I try to find someone who can help us." "I'm not hiding," Elena said firmly. "The summit is tomorrow. If we don't stop this, people will die. And if you're caught, you'll disappear before you can help anyone," Marcus countered. "These people have resources and connections. Right now, your advantage is that they don't know exactly what you've discovered." Elena wanted to argue, but the sound of a car pulling up outside made them both freeze. Marcus moved silently to the window and peered through the blinds. Black SUV. 2 men in suits. His voice was barely above a whisper. "We need to go, now. Is there a back exit?" Fire escaped through the bathroom window. They moved quickly, quietly, Elena leading the way through her small apartment to the bathroom where a narrow window opened onto the fire escape. As Marcus helped her through, they heard the unmistakable sound of her front door being forced open. "Go," Marcus whispered urgently. "I'll be right behind you." Elena descended the middle stairs as quietly as possible, heart pounding. She reached the alley below and looked up, expecting to see Marcus following. Instead, she saw him closing the bathroom window from inside. He had never intended to follow her. He was buying her time. For a moment, Elena considered climbing back up, unwilling to leave him to face whatever was coming. But Marcus had made his choice, and dishonoring that choice would waste the sacrifice he was making. With tears threatening, she turned and ran deeper into the alley, away from the street where the SUV was parked. 2 blocks away, Elena slowed to a walk, trying to blend in with the morning commuters. Her mind raced through options. She couldn't go back to her apartment. Going to the police was risky without knowing who might be compromised. The summit was less than 24 hours away. She needed allies. But who could she trust? Most of her coworkers knew her only superficially. Her family lived across the country. Then she remembered Sofia Rodriguez, a security technician who had always treated the cleaning staff with respect, often staying late to chat with Elena about books and movies while she cleaned the security office. Sofia worked in the technical security division, access cards, surveillance systems, and most importantly, bomb detection. If the attack involved explosives, as Elena suspected from the schematic, Sofia might be her best hope. Finding a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, Elena used her phone to search for Sofia's contact information. They weren't connected on social media, but Elena remembered Sofia mentioning she volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends. A quick search found the shelter's website with a staff appreciation page, and there was Sofia, smiling beside a rescued greyhound. The shelter opened at 10 a.m. Elena had 3 hours to kill, and nowhere safe to go. She moved between public spaces. First a coffee shop, then a library, then a busy department store, never staying in one place long enough to attract attention. She bought a baseball cap and sunglasses from a street vendor, a pitiful disguise but better than nothing. At 10:05, Elena walked into the East Side Animal Rescue Center. The volunteer at the front desk directed her to the dog exercise area, where she found Sofia walking a tan greyhound around a fenced yard. "Elena?" Sofia looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I need your help," Elena said simply. "It's about security at the federal building. People are in danger." To her credit, Sofia didn't dismiss her outright. Instead, she handed the dog's leash to another volunteer and led Elena to a quiet corner of the property. "Tell me everything," she said. Elena did, starting with the overheard conversation and ending with the escape from her apartment. She showed Sofia the photos on her phone, watching the other woman's expression shift from skepticism to concern to alarm. "This timing circuit," Sofia said, zooming in on part of the schematic, "it's sophisticated, military grade, and these modifications to the security protocol." She shook her head. "This creates a perfect blind spot near the main podium." "Elena, this is a professional assassination plan." "Can you help me stop it?" Elena asked. "They have Marcus. I don't know who else I can trust." Sofia was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. "What you're describing involves the head of building security and potentially others in positions of power. Going through official channels might alert them. We don't have time for official channels. The summit starts tomorrow morning." "I know." Sofia made a decision. "I can get you into the building. My clearance allows me to escort maintenance personnel for technical areas. But once we're inside, we'd be on our own. If we're caught—" "I know the risks," Elena said firmly, "but I can't walk away knowing what might happen." Sofia nodded. "My shift starts at 4. Meet me at the coffee shop across from the south entrance at 3:30. Wear this." She handed Elena her shelter volunteer vest. "It's not much of a disguise, but it's better than nothing." The hours until the meeting dragged endlessly. Elena remained in motion, changing locations frequently, constantly watching for the men from the SUV. By the time she reached the coffee shop, exhaustion and anxiety had left her jittery and on edge. Sofia arrived precisely at 3:30, her technical security uniform crisp and official-looking. She handed Elena a maintenance coverall and a cap with the building's technical services logo. "Put these on in the bathroom," she instructed. "I've signed out equipment for HVAC testing in the main hall. That will get us access to the areas we need." The plan was simple but dangerous. Use Sofia's legitimate access to enter the building, locate the explosive device using the schematic as a guide, and alert authorities once they had concrete evidence. Simple, except for the fact that they would be directly opposing a conspiracy with unknown reach and resources. Passing through security was the first hurdle. Elena kept her head down, ID badge clipped to her coveralls as Sophia handled the interaction with the guards. To her surprise, they passed through with minimal scrutiny, Sophia's clearance and confident manner deflecting any close examination of her assistant. Once inside, Sophia led them to a service elevator that accessed the mechanical areas above the Grand Hall. The schematic suggests they're placing the device somewhere with access to the ventilation system, she explained as they rode upward. Maximum dispersal for whatever they're planning. Dispersal? Elena felt a new wave of dread. I thought it was a bomb. The timing mechanism could be for a conventional explosive, Sophia acknowledged, but the configuration suggests something designed to release a substance. Possibly chemical, possibly biological. The implications were horrifying. Not just the ambassador, but everyone in the hall could be targeted. The mechanical level was a maze of ductwork, pipes, and control systems. Sophia moved with purpose, consulting both the building schematics on her tablet and the photos from Elena's phone. If I were placing a device for maximum effect, she murmured, I'd want it here. She pointed to a junction where several large ventilation ducts converged. Air from this point circulates throughout the entire hall within seconds. They approached the area cautiously. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Just the expected machinery of a modern building's air handling system. But as Sophia played her flashlight across the ductwork, Elena noticed something. There, she said, pointing to a section where the metal looked slightly newer than surrounding areas. That panel doesn't match. Sophia examined it closely. You're right. This has been replaced recently. She checked her tablet. No maintenance orders for this section in the past 6 months. Using tools from her equipment bag, Sophia carefully removed the panel. Inside, nestled against the internal mechanisms of the ventilation system, was a sleek metal canister connected to a complex electronic timer. Don't touch it, Sophia warned, though Elena had no intention of doing so. This is military grade. Exactly like the schematic. Elena felt a strange mixture of vindication and terror. We need to alert someone. The FBI, Homeland Security, someone outside Reynolds' influence. Agreed. I have a contact at the Bureau who... Sophia's words cut off as a sound reached them. The service elevator was ascending. Someone's coming, Elena whispered. There was nowhere to hide in the open mechanical space. The elevator would open directly into the area where they stood. They had seconds at most. Take this. Sophia thrust her phone into Elena's hands. All the evidence is there. Get to the fire stairs at the end of the hall. Go down 3 levels and find Security Officer Daniels. He's not part of this. Tell him everything. What about you? I'll delay them. My clearance gives me reason to be here. Yours doesn't. Go! Elena wanted to argue, but the elevator indicator showed it nearly at their floor. With a last desperate look at Sophia, she ran for the fire exit, slipping through just as the elevator doors began to open. The stairwell was dimly lit and eerily quiet after the mechanical hum of the air handling room. Elena descended rapidly, counting levels, Sophia's phone clutched tightly in her hand. As she reached the designated floor and prepared to exit, the door above her crashed open. Heavy footsteps pounded down the stairs. Stop! Security! A man's voice called. Elena ran faster, taking the stairs 2 at a time, no longer caring about noise. She reached the next level down and burst through the door into a hallway she recognized from her cleaning routes. Executive offices, likely empty at this hour, as staff prepared for tomorrow's summit. She ran past closed doors, looking for somewhere to hide. Behind her, the stairwell door slammed open. She ducked into an office suite, closing the door quietly behind her. The outer office was empty, but a light shone under the door of the private office beyond. Elena had no choice. She knocked on the inner door. "Come in," called a woman's voice. Elena entered to find an elegantly dressed older woman sitting behind a large desk. The nameplate read, Director Catherine Walsh. "I'm sorry to intrude," Elena began, trying to control her breathing. "But I need help. There's a device planted in the ventilation system. People at tomorrow's summit are in danger." She expected skepticism, dismissal, even anger at the interruption. Instead, Director Walsh's expression sharpened with immediate focus. "Show me," she said simply. Elena handed over Sophia's phone, explaining quickly about the photos, the schematic, and what they discovered in the mechanical room. As she spoke, the sounds of searching security personnel grew louder in the hallway outside. Walsh listened without interruption, then picked up her desk phone and dialed a 4-digit extension. "This is Director Walsh, security code Alpha 79. I need a full lockdown of the building, all personnel to remain in place, and a hazardous device team to the main ventilation junction above the Grand Hall. No communications through standard channels." She paused. "And find William Reynolds. Take him into custody immediately." She hung up and turned back to Elena. "You've shown remarkable courage, Ms. Marquez. Elena Marquez. Ms. Marquez, my position as Director of Intelligence Oversight means I have certain authorities within this building that supersede even the Security Director. I've suspected information leaks for months, but had no concrete evidence until now." Before Elena could respond, the office door burst open. 2 security officers with weapons drawn entered, followed by William Reynolds himself. "Director Walsh," Reynolds said smoothly, ignoring Elena completely. "We have a security breach. This woman accessed restricted areas under false pretenses." "I'm aware of Ms. Marquez's actions," Walsh replied coldly. "What I'm more interested in is the explosive device she discovered in the ventilation system. The one that matches exactly the schematic found in your office." Reynolds' composure faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. His hand moved toward his jacket. "I wouldn't," Walsh said, and Elena noticed for the first time that the director had a small pistol pointed at Reynolds from beneath the desk. "Officers, take Mr. Reynolds into custody. Suspected terrorism and conspiracy to commit murder." One of the security officers hesitated. "Sir?" "Do it," Walsh commanded. "Unless you'd like to explain why you're disobeying a direct order during a security lockdown." The moment hung in balance. Elena saw Reynolds calculating his options, saw the security officers weighing their loyalties. Then the building's alarm system activated, a pulsing tone that signified emergency protocols. The decision was made for them. The senior officer holstered his weapon and moved toward Reynolds. "Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Reynolds' face contorted with rage. Instead of complying, he lunged toward Elena with unexpected speed, grabbing her and pulling her in front of him as a shield. "Nobody moves," he snarled, pressing something hard against Elena's back. "Or I trigger the device remotely." Director Walsh remained eerily calm. "The building is in electromagnetic lockdown, Reynolds. All unauthorized transmissions are being jammed. Your remote won't work." "You're bluffing," he said, but Elena felt his grip falter slightly. "Am I?" Walsh's gaze was steel. "Why don't you try it and find out? Before my hazardous device team reaches the mechanical room and disables your little project permanently." Reynolds' breathing quickened. Elena could feel his desperation mounting. Whatever plan he'd had was unraveling rapidly, and desperate men made dangerous choices. "Let her go," Walsh continued, her voice now gentle but firm. "This doesn't end well for you otherwise." For a moment, Elena thought Reynolds might comply. Then his arm tightened around her throat. "We're leaving," he said. "She comes with me as insurance. Anyone follows, I kill her." "That's not happening," Walsh replied, the pistol still steady in her hand. Elena knew she had to act. Reynolds was focused on Walsh and the officers. His attention split. His grip was tight but imprecise, a mistake only an amateur would make. 8 years earlier, during college, Elena had taken self-defense classes following an incident in her dormitory. The instructor had drilled one principle above all others. When grabbed from behind, drop your weight. She let her knees buckle suddenly, dropping her full weight downward and forward. Reynolds, unprepared for the movement, instinctively tightened his grip, but couldn't compensate for the sudden shift. As his balance faltered, Elena drove her elbow backward with all her strength, connecting with his solar plexus. Reynolds gasped, his grip loosening. Elena twisted free, ducking to the side, just as Director Walsh barked, "Down!" Elena dropped to the floor. There was a single shot, precise, controlled. Reynolds screamed, clutching his shoulder as he fell. The security officers moved in immediately, securing him despite his struggles. In the sudden silence that followed, Elena remained on the floor, adrenaline still coursing through her body. Director Walsh came around the desk and helped her to her feet. "Are you all right, Ms. Marquez?" she asked. Her professional demeanor softened with genuine concern. Elena nodded, unable to find words immediately. "Good. Because I believe we need to check on your friend Sophia immediately." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. A specialized team secured the device in the mechanical room, while counterterrorism experts began an immediate investigation. Sophia was found unconscious but alive. She had been struck from behind when confronting Reynolds' accomplice, who was now also in custody. As medical personnel treated Sophia, Director Walsh led Elena to a quiet office away from the commotion. "I've received preliminary reports on the device," Walsh said, offering Elena a cup of tea with steady hands that suggested this wasn't her first crisis. "It was designed to release a neurotoxin during the ambassador's speech. The casualties would have been catastrophic." Elena's hands trembled around her cup. "All those people who are alive because of your actions," Walsh finished firmly. "Which brings me to my next point. We found Marcus Jenkins." Elena's head snapped up. "Is he?" "He's alive, injured, but stable. He managed to warn the men questioning him that you had evidence, which is why Reynolds accelerated his timeline." Relief flooded through Elena, followed quickly by exhaustion as the events of the past 2 days caught up with her. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Walsh studied her with thoughtful eyes. "That depends partly on you, Ms. Marquez. This incident has revealed significant vulnerabilities in our security protocols and personnel vetting. We need people who see what others miss, who act when others won't." "I'm just a cleaner," Elena said automatically, then stopped herself. "No, I'm not just anything." Walsh smiled. "Precisely. Which is why I'd like to offer you a position in our security assessment division, once this investigation concludes." Elena stared at her, stunned. "You want me to work in security? I don't have training or credentials. You have something more valuable, perspective. You saw a threat that everyone else missed because they were too busy not seeing you." Walsh leaned forward. "Training can be provided. Credentials can be earned. But the ability to observe without being observed? To move through spaces, noticing what others overlook? That's rare, Ms. Marquez. That's a gift." Before Elena could respond, there was a knock at the door. A serious-looking man in a dark suit entered. "Director, the hazardous device team needs Ms. Marquez's assistance. There's a secondary trigger mechanism they can't identify, but it matches part of the schematic she found." Walsh turned to Elena. "Are you up for this?" Elena thought about all the time she'd been dismissed, overlooked, considered unimportant. She thought about Marcus putting himself at risk to protect her, about Sophia facing danger to help her, about the lives that hung in the balance. "Yes," she said, rising to her feet with new determination. "I can help." What she didn't yet know was that the most difficult challenge still lay ahead, one that would require not just her observational skills, but a courage she didn't know she possessed. The secondary device was more complex than anyone anticipated, and disarming it would become the moment that transformed her from invisible to unforgettable. The hazardous device team had transformed the Grand Hall into a high-tech command center. Equipment cases lay open across the polished floors where diplomats should have been gathering. Specialists in protective gear moved with practiced efficiency, their faces tense with concentration. At the center of this controlled chaos stood the device, now removed from the ventilation system and placed within a containment unit. Elena stood beside Commander Jackson Phillips, the leader of the hazardous device team, studying the schematic on Sophia's phone. Phillips was a 20-year veteran with graying temples and steady hands that had disarmed over 300 explosive devices during his career. Yet now those hands were uncharacteristically still as he processed what their sensors had revealed. "It's unlike anything I've seen in civilian applications," Phillips said, his voice quiet but urgent. "The primary device contains the dispersal mechanism for the neurotoxin, but this secondary trigger has multiple failsafes. If we attempt standard disarming procedures, it appears designed to release the compound immediately." "Can't you just contain it?" Elena asked. "Seal it completely until you can transport it somewhere safe?" Phillips shook his head. "The outer casing is rigged with pressure sensors. Any attempt to seal it triggers detonation. We need to disarm it where it sits." One of Philip's team approached with a tablet displaying thermal imaging of the device's interior. "Sir, we've mapped the internal components. There's something odd about the configuration." Philip studied the image, then passed the tablet to Elena. "Does anything here match what you saw in the schematic?" Elena compared the thermal image to the crumpled paper she'd found. Most of the components matched exactly: the dispersal chamber, the primary timer, the triggering mechanism. But one element stood out as different. "This section here," she pointed to a small rectangular component near the base. "It's not on the schematic, and the wiring pattern is different." Phillips examined it more closely. "Good catch. That's not standard." "It almost looks like a recognition circuit," finished another team member who had joined them. "Similar to what we've seen in devices designed to identify who's attempting to disarm them." Elena felt a chill. "You mean it can tell who's working on it?" "More likely it's designed to recognize a specific disarming sequence," Phillips explained. "A signature approach that only the maker would know." The team huddled around their equipment, discussing technical aspects of the device that Elena couldn't follow. Words like capacitive sensing and binary failsafe protocols flowed around her. She stepped back, feeling suddenly out of place among these highly trained specialists. What had she been thinking? She was a cleaner, not a bomb technician. Director Walsh approached, having changed from her elegant business attire into more practical clothing. "They're struggling," she observed quietly. "They're the experts," Elena replied. "I don't know what more I can do." Walsh studied her thoughtfully. "Sometimes expertise creates its own blind spots. They're approaching this as they've been trained to do, looking at the device as a technical problem to solve. You've been approaching everything differently from the beginning." Before Elena could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Two agents were escorting someone into the hall. Marcus Jenkins, his arm in a sling, his face bruised but his eyes alert. "Marcus!" Elena rushed to him, relief flooding through her at seeing him alive. "Couldn't keep me away," he said with a grimace that might have been a smile. "Not when I heard you were here saving the day." "Hardly," Elena said. "The experts are handling it now." Marcus glanced toward the containment area where Phillips and his team continued their analysis. "Don't sell yourself short. You found the device when no one else even knew to look. That's more than most people would have accomplished." Director Walsh joined them. "Mr. Jenkins, you should be in medical." "With respect, Director, I'll return to medical when this is over. Until then, I go where I'm needed." Walsh nodded, accepting his determination. "Then perhaps you can help. We're dealing with a secondary trigger mechanism that's resisting conventional disarming techniques." The three of them moved closer to the containment area, where Phillips was now examining the device through a specialized microscope connected to a monitor. The image showed intricate circuitry unlike anything Elena had seen before. "The recognition circuit is the key," Phillips was saying. "It's waiting for a specific sequence of disarming actions. Get the sequence wrong, and it triggers immediately." "Like a passcode," Elena murmured. Phillips glanced up. "Exactly like a passcode. Except we don't know how many digits, what format, or what happens if we make a mistake." Elena studied the monitor, noticing something familiar about the circuit pattern. "Can you zoom in on that section?" she asked, pointing to a cluster of connections near the power source. Phillips adjusted the view. Elena leaned closer, a memory surfacing from her chemistry studies. "Those markings along the circuit pathways, they're not just manufacturing details, are they?" One of the technicians looked where she was pointing. "Good eye. No, those appear to be custom-etched. Some sort of notation system?" Elena felt a surge of recognition. "It's a molecular formula. Or rather, several formulas arranged in sequence." Her mind reached back to her university days, to long hours spent memorizing chemical structures and reactions. "Those are neurotransmitter molecules: dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine." Phillips looked at her with new respect. "You recognize these?" "I have a degree in chemistry," Elena explained, feeling strange saying it aloud after so many years of having that knowledge go unacknowledged. "These are the major neurotransmitters in the human brain, arranged in a specific sequence." "Could that be the disarming sequence?" Walsh asked. "Possibly," Phillips said. but implementing it would be extremely risky. One error, and the device triggers. Elena studied the circuit more intently. There's a pattern here. The molecules are arranged by complexity, but with one out of sequence. It's like a puzzle. A chemist's puzzle, Marcus said. Makes sense if you want only certain people to be able to disarm it. Phillips conferred with his team, then turned back to Elena. We have two options. We can attempt a controlled detonation inside a specialized containment vessel, but our analysis suggests a 40% chance the containment would fail, resulting in at least some neurotoxin release. Or we can attempt to disarm using the sequence you've identified, with unknown probability of success. The weight of the decision settled over the room. Elena looked at the faces around her. Professionals who had trained for years to handle these exact situations, now looking to her for insight. What would the disarming process involve? She asked. Phillips indicated a specialized toolset. We would need to create electrical impulses in the exact sequence of the molecular pattern, with precise timing between each. The challenge is that the tool must remain in contact with the circuit throughout the entire sequence. Any interruption would likely trigger detonation. So steady hands are essential, Elena observed. Extremely steady, Phillips confirmed. And intimate knowledge of the molecular sequence. My team knows the technical aspects of disarming, but none of us are chemists who can verify the correct pattern in real time if there are any surprises. Elena understood what wasn't being said. The ideal approach would combine technical disarming skills with chemical knowledge, a rare combination not present on Phillips' team. I know the molecular structures, she said quietly, and I have steady hands from years of detailed cleaning work. The room fell silent. Director Walsh stepped forward. Ms. Marquez, no one is asking you to take this risk. I know, Elena replied, but I'm volunteering anyway. Phillips looked skeptical. With all due respect, disarming explosive devices requires specialized training. The tools are precise, the margins for error non-existent. Then train me, Elena said simply. Show me exactly what to do. I'll follow your instructions while applying my knowledge of the chemical sequence. A debate ensued among the team members, with opinions sharply divided. Some argued that Elena's lack of technical training made her participation too risky. Others pointed out that the alternative, attempted containment with a high failure probability, was potentially more dangerous. As the arguments continued, Elena moved closer to the monitor displaying the circuit. The pattern of molecules was clear to her now, a sequence that began with the simplest neurotransmitters and progressed to the most complex, with one deliberate error in the pattern. That error was the key, a trap for anyone who didn't recognize it. Time is a factor, she reminded them. The primary timer is still counting down, isn't it? Phillips nodded grimly. 18 minutes remaining on the primary detonation sequence. Then we need to decide now, Elena said with a calmness she didn't entirely feel. Director Walsh took command of the situation. Commander Phillips, is Ms. Marquez's approach technically feasible with your guidance? Phillips considered for a moment. Yes, with proper instruction on tool usage. But the risk remains substantial. And the containment option? Also substantial risk, potentially to a wider area. Walsh nodded. Then I'm authorizing Ms. Marquez's approach, provided she receives immediate training and constant guidance throughout the process. The next 10 minutes were the most intense of Elena's life. She received crash instruction in the use of specialized disarming tools, delicate instruments designed to interface with the device's circuitry. Phillips walked her through each step of the process, having her practice on a non-explosive training unit while explaining the principles behind each action. Elena absorbed everything with intense focus, her mind clearing of all distractions. The years she had spent developing precision in her cleaning work, handling delicate objects, removing stains from irreplaceable materials, working around valuable equipment without disturbing it, had prepared her hands for this moment in ways no one could have anticipated. Ready? Phillips asked as the training session concluded. Elena took a deep breath. Ready. They moved to the containment area where the device waited. The team had positioned cameras to give Elena a magnified view of the circuit she would be working with. She was fitted with specialized gloves that would protect her from electrical discharge while maintaining tactile sensitivity. I'll be talking you through each step, Phillips said as Elena took position. If at any point you feel uncertain, Tell me immediately. Elena nodded, her focus narrowing to the task ahead. The surrounding room, the people watching, even the danger, all faded as she centered herself on the delicate circuitry before her. Beginning with the first molecular contact point, Phillips directed. Dopamine pathway. Gentle contact, no pressure. Elena positioned the tool precisely on the first contact point. Contact established. Hold for 3 seconds, then transition to serotonin without breaking contact. Elena counted silently, then slid the tool with microscopic precision to the next contact point. The circuit illuminated slightly, acknowledging the correct sequence. Good, Phillips murmured. Next is acetylcholine. Elena shifted the tool again, her movements fluid and precise. Another acknowledgement from the circuit. Now comes the tricky part, she said, recognizing the approaching trap in the sequence. The pattern suggests norepinephrine next, but that's the deliberate error. It should be GABA instead. Phillips checked his notes. Our analysis doesn't show that variation. Trust me, Elena said, her eyes fixed on the circuit pattern. The molecular structure etching is subtly different. A chemist would recognize it. There was a moment of tension as Phillips consulted with his team. Time was ticking down. 14 minutes remaining. Your call, he finally said. But be certain. Elena didn't hesitate. She moved the tool to the GABA pathway contact point, bypassing the more obvious norepinephrine circuit. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the circuit pulsed with acknowledgement, more strongly than before. You were right, Phillips said, tension evident in his voice. Continue the sequence. Elena proceeded through the remaining neurotransmitters, glutamate, glycine, histamine, each contact precise, each transition smooth and unbroken. 7 minutes remained on the primary timer when she reached the final molecular pathway. Last sequence element, Phillips confirmed. Endorphin pathway, then hold for 5 seconds. Elena positioned the tool on the final contact point, maintaining the steady pressure that had served her through the sequence. The circuit pulsed, acknowledging the completed pattern. 5 seconds, Phillips counted. 4, 3, 2, 1. The circuit flashed once, then went dark. The primary timer froze, then disappeared from the display. Disarmed, Phillips announced, the relief in his voice palpable. Primary and secondary triggers neutralized. A cheer erupted from the team members watching. Elena carefully withdrew the tool, her hands steady but her heart pounding. She stood, suddenly light-headed as the adrenaline that had sustained her began to ebb. Marcus was there immediately, supporting her with his good arm. You did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You actually did it. We did it, Elena corrected, including everyone who had contributed to this moment, from Sophia, who had helped her access the building, to Phillips, who had guided her through the disarming process. Director Walsh approached, her normally composed features showing genuine admiration. That was extraordinary work, Ms. Marquez. You remained calm under pressure that would have broken most trained professionals. Elena accepted the praise with a nod, still processing what had just happened. She had disarmed a sophisticated neurotoxin device that would have killed hundreds of people. She, a cleaner whom most people in this building had never even noticed, had saved lives that would never know they had been in danger. As the hazardous device team secured the neutralized device for evidence, Elena stepped away from the containment area. Her body felt simultaneously exhausted and energized, as though some fundamental shift had occurred within her. How are you feeling? Marcus asked, noticing her expression. I'm not sure, Elena admitted. Everything happened so fast. Yesterday I was mopping floors and worrying about bills. Today I'm disarming terrorist weapons. Marcus smiled. Life changes in an instant sometimes. The question is what you do with those moments. Before Elena could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Sophia Rodriguez was being wheeled in on a gurney, against medical advice according to her frustrated attendant. I had to see for myself, Sophia called as she was brought closer. They told me you disarmed it? Elena moved to her friend's side. We all did our part. How are you feeling? Like I got hit with a pipe wrench, Sophia grimaced, which apparently I did. But worth it to stop these bastards. Director Walsh joined them, Accompanied by several agents in dark suits, we've identified at least 7 co-conspirators based on Reynolds' communications. 3 have already been apprehended, but we believe there may be others still operating within government circles. What was their objective? Elena asked. Why target the Moroccan ambassador specifically? The ambassador has been leading a multinational anti-terrorism coalition, Walsh explained. His death would have destabilized the initiative and created international tension that certain groups would exploit. But the neurotoxin suggests an even more sinister goal: mass casualties that would trigger a diplomatic crisis. The enormity of what they had prevented settled over the group. It wasn't just an assassination they had stopped, but potentially the first move in a larger geopolitical manipulation. What happens now? Elena asked. Debriefing, investigation, prosecution, Walsh replied. And for you, some decisions to consider. She handed Elena a business card with a private number handwritten on the back. My offer stands. Someone with your observational skills, chemistry background, and proven grace under pressure would be an asset to our security assessment division. Elena took the card, still struggling to process how dramatically her life had changed in less than 48 hours. Take some time, Walsh advised. Rest, recover, then call me when you're ready. As Walsh moved away to coordinate with her team, Marcus leaned closer to Elena. For what it's worth, I think you'd be amazing at it. You've already proven you can see what others miss. I never aspired to work in security, Elena said honestly. I became a cleaner because my family needed immediate income when my mother got sick. My chemistry degree felt like a dream from another lifetime. Maybe this is that dream circling back, Sophia suggested from her gurney. Just with more explosives than the average chemistry lab. The observation startled a laugh from Elena, releasing some of the tension she'd been carrying. As the 3 of them talked, the grand hall gradually transformed around them. The hazardous device team packing their equipment, evidence technicians documenting every aspect of the scene, security personnel establishing new protocols for the rescheduled summit. Life was continuing, plans adapting, the world moving forward, all because they had refused to look away from a threat others couldn't or wouldn't see. Hours later, after extensive debriefing and medical evaluation, Elena finally left the federal building. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the plaza, where diplomats should have been gathering for the summit's opening reception. Instead, the space was filled with law enforcement vehicles and busy personnel managing the aftermath of the foiled attack. As Elena stood on the steps, watching the activity below, she felt a strange sense of connection to the building behind her. For years, it had been merely her workplace. Rooms to clean, floors to polish, a paycheck to earn. Now it represented something more. A place where she had finally been seen, where her capabilities had been recognized, where she had made a difference that mattered. A government car waited to take her to a secure location for the night. Her apartment was still considered compromised. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more decisions, more adjustments to this new reality. But for now, Elena allowed herself a moment to simply breathe and acknowledge what she had accomplished. She had entered the building as someone others overlooked and underestimated. She would return, whether as security personnel or in some other capacity, as someone who had proven her worth beyond any doubt. As she descended the steps toward the waiting car, Elena realized that the most important thing she had disarmed today wasn't the explosive device. It was the doubt, both external and internal, about who she was and what she was capable of achieving. The true detonation had been the shattering of limitations others had placed upon her, and that explosion had only just begun to reshape her world. 6 months after the day that changed everything, Elena Marquez stood at the podium in the Grand Hall, addressing the graduating class of the Federal Security Training Program. The room was filled with newly qualified security personnel, their faces attentive as she spoke. Behind them sat distinguished guests. Director Walsh in the front row, Commander Phillips from the hazardous device team, and Sofia Rodriguez, now fully recovered and serving as Elena's deputy in the newly formed Perceptual Security Division. When I first walked into this building, Elena began, her voice carrying confidently through the space. I did so with a mop and a cleaning cart. I moved through these halls largely unseen, my presence acknowledged only when something needed to be tidied away. I existed in the background of important conversations, the peripheral vision of significant moments. She paused, remembering those days with neither resentment nor nostalgia, but with the clarity of someone who understood their value. What I didn't realize then was that this perspective, this experience of being overlooked, was preparing me for something crucial. It was teaching me to see what others miss, to hear what goes unspoken, to understand the rhythms and patterns that reveal themselves only to those patient enough to observe without interrupting. The hall was silent, every person present aware of the story that had brought Elena to this moment. The foiled attack, the disarming of the neurotoxin device, the unraveling of a conspiracy that had extended into multiple government agencies. What had begun as one woman noticing suspicious conversations had evolved into one of the most significant counterterrorism operations in recent years. Today, as you graduate and prepare to take your positions protecting our institutions and citizens, I want to challenge you to reconsider what security truly means. It isn't just about clearance levels and access controls, surveillance systems and threat assessments. Those tools are essential, but they are incomplete without something more fundamental: perception. Elena stepped away from the podium, moving to the edge of the stage to establish a more direct connection with her audience. Perception is about seeing beyond the obvious. It's about recognizing that threats don't always announce themselves with warnings and manifestos. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, camouflaged by our expectations and biases about who matters and who doesn't, about where danger comes from and where it doesn't. She smiled slightly, recalling her own journey. 6 months ago, I disarmed a sophisticated device that would have killed hundreds of people. The media called it heroic. They focused on those final moments, the steady hands, the chemical knowledge, the courage under pressure. But the true turning point wasn't when I touched that disarming tool. It was when I first decided to listen to a conversation that wasn't meant for me, when I questioned what I heard instead of dismissing it, when I refused to accept that my position as a cleaner meant I had no responsibility to act. In the audience, Elena could see heads nodding, particularly among those who had come from non-traditional backgrounds: former service workers, retail employees, people who had lived experiences outside the typical security recruitment channels. Director Walsh had championed this diversity in the newest cohort, arguing that homogeneous security teams created predictable blind spots. Your training has given you technical skills and procedural knowledge, Elena continued. Those are your tools. But your perspectives, your unique life experiences, the paths that brought you here, the things you notice that others might miss, those are your true assets. Don't discard them in an effort to conform. Embrace them as your contribution to our collective security. She returned to the podium, gathering her thoughts for the conclusion. The journey from that moment of overhearing a suspicious conversation to standing here, addressing future security personnel, had been neither straightforward nor easy. There had been resistance to her appointment, skepticism about her qualifications, resentment from those who believed her sudden prominence was undeserved. After the events of 6 months ago, I was offered a choice, Elena said, her voice softening with the personal nature of the revelation. I could accept a commendation, a generous financial reward, and return to my previous life with the gratitude of a government that preferred to keep its heroes at a comfortable distance. Or I could step into a role that had never existed before, building something new based on the principle that true security comes from seeing the whole picture, including the parts we're conditioned to ignore. She gestured toward Director Walsh. Thanks to the vision of leadership willing to challenge conventional thinking, I chose the latter. The Perceptual Security Division was created not just as a response to a single averted attack, but as an acknowledgement that our traditional approaches have systematic blind spots that can be exploited by those who understand them. Elena picked up a small object from beside the podium, a cleaning badge much like the one she had worn for years. She held it up for the audience to see. I keep this as a reminder, not of who I was, but of what I learned in that role. Every position, every perspective, every person has value in creating true security. The maintenance worker who notices an unusual pattern in building access. The administrative assistant who recognizes strange behaviors in a previously reliable colleague. The security guard who senses something off about a routine delivery. These aren't just anecdotal supplements to our technological systems. They are essential components of comprehensive protection. She set the badge down and straightened her shoulders. Your assignment, as you leave this training and take your positions, is to remember this. Security isn't just what we do, it's how we see. It's recognizing that sometimes the person most likely to spot the critical detail is the one least expected to matter. As Elena concluded her address, The audience rose in a standing ovation. The applause echoed through the grand hall, the same space where, half a year earlier, she had disarmed a device designed to kill everyone present at an international peace summit. The formal ceremony continued with the presentation of credentials and assignments. Afterward, during the reception, Elena found herself approached by person after person, many sharing stories of their own moments of being underestimated or overlooked. "Your speech was exactly what they needed to hear," Director Walsh said, joining Elena by a window overlooking the city. "Especially this group. 40% come from backgrounds not traditionally represented in security services, including 3 former cleaning staff," Elena noted with satisfaction. The recruitment initiative had been one of her first proposals, actively seeking out service workers whose observational skills and facility access gave them unique security insights. "The Reynolds conspiracy case goes to trial next month," Walsh continued, her voice lower. "The prosecutor wants you to testify about the initial discovery." Elena nodded. In the months since the foiled attack, the investigation had uncovered a network extending beyond William Reynolds, reaching into multiple agencies and even foreign governments. The complexity of the conspiracy had confirmed her initial instinct that something bigger than a single attack had been planned. "I'll testify," she agreed, "though I expect the defense will try to discredit me based on my former position." Walsh smiled thinly. "Let them try. Your actions speak for themselves. And speaking of actions..." She gestured toward the entrance where a familiar figure had appeared. Marcus Jenkins moved through the reception with a slight limp, a permanent reminder of his encounter with Reynolds' associates. After weeks of recovery, he had accepted a position as liaison between the building's regular security services and Elena's new division, bridging the gap between traditional approaches and innovative perspectives. "Quite a speech," he said as he reached them, "though you left out the part where you were terrified the entire time you were disarming that device." Elena laughed. Selective storytelling. Much more inspirational that way. "How's the new team shaping up?" Marcus asked, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a passing server. "Promising," Elena replied. "The integration of service staff perspectives with technical security training is creating exactly the hybrid approach we hoped for. Sophia's technical expertise complements the observational focus perfectly." As if summoned by her name, Sofia Rodriguez joined their small circle. "Sorry, I'm late. Had to finish the briefing on the new perceptual mapping system." She turned to Walsh. "Director, the initial results are exceeding expectations. The algorithm is successfully identifying behavioral anomalies that traditional systems miss." Elena felt a surge of pride. The perceptual mapping system had been her concept, a way of quantifying and analyzing the observations that service personnel made during their routine work. The patterns that emerged when these observations were aggregated had already identified several security concerns that conventional approaches had missed. "That reminds me," Sophia continued, lowering her voice slightly, "we might have something significant developing on the 7th floor. 3 different maintenance workers have reported unusual access patterns in supposedly unused offices. Could be nothing but those are exactly the discrepancies we created this division to catch," Elena finished. "Let's review the reports first thing tomorrow." As Sophia and Marcus moved away to greet other attendees, Director Walsh gave Elena a thoughtful look. "You've built something remarkable in just 6 months. The methodologies you've developed are being adopted by agencies across the government." "We've built something remarkable," Elena corrected gently. "None of this would exist without your willingness to challenge established security paradigms." Walsh acknowledged the point with a slight nod. "Perhaps. But it took someone with your perspective to show us the gaps in our approach. Someone who understood from experience what it means to be seen without being noticed." The reception continued around them, new security personnel mixing with established leaders, traditional approaches blending with innovative thinking. Elena observed the interactions with the same attentive awareness that had once made her an exceptional cleaner and now made her an unprecedented security asset. Later that evening, after the formalities had concluded, Elena found herself alone in the grand hall. The space had been transformed yet again, from ceremony venue back to the dignified meeting space it was designed to be. Tomorrow it would host the diplomatic summit that had been postponed after the foiled attack, with enhanced security measures and a new awareness of potential vulnerabilities. She walked to the exact spot where the neurotoxin device had been positioned, remembering the intensity of those moments when she had disarmed it with Commander Phillips' guidance. The fear had been real, not just of the device itself, but of failing, of proving that a cleaner had no business attempting what trained specialists found challenging. "Thought I might find you here," came a voice from the entrance. Sophia walked in, her security badge glinting under the dimmed evening lights. "Just revisiting old memories," Elena explained as her friend joined her. "Good ones or bad ones?" Sophia asked. "Transformative ones," Elena replied after consideration. "This is where everything changed, not just for me personally, but for how we approach security in this building." Sophia nodded, understanding the significance. "I saw the final participant list for tomorrow's summit. The Moroccan ambassador specifically requested a security briefing from you before the proceedings begin." "From me?" Elena was surprised. "I assumed he'd want the standard protocol review from traditional security." "Apparently not. Word of your background has spread. He said something about wanting to hear from the cleaner who sees what others miss." Sophia smiled. "You've become something of a legend in diplomatic circles, the invisible protector who emerged from the background to save hundreds of lives." Elena shook her head at the dramatization. "Hardly invisible now. That's the point, isn't it? You showed what's possible when we stop overlooking people based on their positions. The changes you've implemented go far beyond security protocols. You've changed how people value different perspectives." As they walked together toward the exit, Elena reflected on the truth of Sophia's observation. The most significant impact of the past 6 months hadn't been the structural reorganization of security services or the development of new threat detection methodologies, though those were important. It had been the cultural shift, the growing recognition that security insights could come from anyone, regardless of title or background. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect Washington day that seemed designed for diplomatic events. Elena arrived early, conducting a personal walkthrough of the security measures that had been implemented for the summit. The changes were both obvious and subtle. Increased visible presence at key access points, but also a new integration of service staff into the security framework. Cleaning personnel, maintenance workers, food service employees, all had received basic observational training and clear reporting protocols. They weren't expected to act as security officers, but rather to contribute their unique perspectives to the overall security picture. The approach had initially met resistance from traditional security leadership, who worried about operational discipline and information security. But early results had been so promising that even the skeptics had come to appreciate the enhanced awareness it provided. "Ms. Marquez," called a voice as Elena completed her inspection. She turned to find Ambassador Khalid approaching, accompanied by his personal security detail. The Moroccan diplomat was in his 60s, with distinguished silver hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Ambassador," Elena greeted him with appropriate formality. "I understand you requested a briefing." "Indeed," he confirmed, dismissing his security team with a discreet gesture. When they were relatively alone, his team maintaining visual contact but out of earshot, the ambassador continued. "I wanted to thank you personally for what you did 6 months ago. I'm told the attack was specifically targeted at me, but would have killed many others." "I was just doing what needed to be done," Elena replied, uncomfortable with direct praise. "As was I once," the ambassador said, surprising her. "Before I was a diplomat, before I was even a politician, I was a hotel worker in Casablanca. I cleaned rooms, carried luggage, observed the comings and goings of people who never truly saw me." Elena looked at him with new interest. This wasn't in any of the briefing materials she had reviewed. "It was in that capacity that I first noticed unusual patterns among certain guests," the ambassador continued. "Meetings that seemed innocuous but felt wrong somehow. Conversations that changed tone when staff entered the room. I reported my concerns to hotel security, who fortunately took them seriously." "What happened?" Elena asked, fascinated by the parallel to her own experience. "The hotel was being used as a planning center for a terrorist cell. My observations led to the disruption of an attack that would have killed dozens at a popular tourist destination." He smiled slightly at her expression. "Yes, Ms. Marquez. I understand your journey perhaps better than most. The transition from being unseen to being heard is not an easy one. No, Elena agreed softly. It isn't. But it is a necessary one, the ambassador continued. In my country, I have implemented programs that incorporate service workers into security frameworks, not as informants, but as valued observers whose perspectives enhance overall safety. When I heard about your similar initiatives here, I knew I needed to meet you. They walked together toward the main entrance where early summit attendees were beginning to arrive. The ambassador's security detail maintained a respectful distance, but Elena noticed their constant awareness, not just of potential external threats, but of the entire environment. They had been trained in perceptual security principles, she realized. Your experience demonstrates something I have long believed, the ambassador said as they reached the reception area. True security comes not from technology or force, but from humanity, from people paying attention to one another with respect and understanding. From recognizing that dignity and value exist in every role, every position, every person. Elena nodded, deeply moved by his words and the validation they represented. That's exactly what we're trying to build here. And succeeding, from what I've observed, the ambassador said with approval. Your methods are being discussed in international security circles. There is interest in implementing similar approaches in diplomatic facilities worldwide. The implications of his statement were significant. What had begun as one cleaner noticing suspicious conversations could potentially transform security approaches globally. As the ambassador moved away to greet other dignitaries, Elena took a position at the edge of the gathering. From here, she could observe the entire space. The diplomats arriving with their entourages, the security personnel stationed at strategic points, the service staff moving efficiently through their duties while maintaining awareness of their surroundings. Director Walsh joined her, impeccably dressed for the diplomatic occasion. Everything in order? Yes, Elena confirmed. The integrated security approach is functioning exactly as designed. Service staff are engaging with their observational protocols, traditional security is maintaining standard procedures, and the coordination between the two is seamless. Walsh nodded with satisfaction. The ambassador seemed impressed with your briefing. It was more of a mutual exchange, Elena explained, sharing the ambassador's background. His experience validates our approach in ways I hadn't anticipated. It's always good to have international support, Walsh agreed, especially for methodologies that challenge established practices. As the hall filled with diplomats and their staff, Elena continued her subtle observation. This was the true test of everything they had built over the past 6 months. Not just the physical security measures and technological systems, but the cultural changes and perceptual frameworks that formed the foundation of their new approach. The summit proceeded without incident, each session building constructively on the last. Security remained vigilant but unobtrusive. Service staff contributed their observations through the established channels, and the integrated approach demonstrated its effectiveness in real time. At the day's conclusion, as attendees departed and the cleaning staff began preparing the hall for the next day's sessions, Elena made a point of personally thanking each service worker for their participation in the security framework. You're the reason this works, she told a young man who had recently joined the maintenance team. Your observations matter. Your perspective matters. Because of you, he replied with genuine appreciation, you showed everyone that we see things others don't. As Elena left the building that evening, she paused on the steps where she had stood 6 months earlier, contemplating the transformation in her life. The woman who had entered this building with a cleaning cart and invisible status had emerged as someone who had not only saved lives but changed systems. She thought about all the other, invisible workers still moving through buildings across the country and around the world. The cleaners, maintenance workers, food service staff, delivery personnel, each with their own unique perspective, each noticing things that others missed. What had begun with one person refusing to remain silent had evolved into a movement that recognized the value of every perspective in creating true security. The cleaner who had disarmed a bomb with her eyes closed, trusting her knowledge, her hands, and her instincts when others might have faltered, had opened eyes throughout the security establishment to possibilities previously overlooked. As Elena descended the steps toward the future she had helped create, she carried with her the certainty that true security came not from seeing some people as important and others as background, but from recognizing that every person, regardless of position, contributed to the whole. The greatest threat had never been the device she disarmed, but the blindness that had allowed it to be placed. And the greatest protection wasn't technology or force, but perception, the willingness to see clearly without the distortions of prejudice or preconception. Elena Marquez had entered a building as someone others overlooked and emerged as someone unforgettable, not because she had changed who she was, but because she had refused to accept the limitations others placed upon her. In doing so, she had not only saved lives but transformed systems, creating ripples of change that would continue long after the dramatic events that had triggered them were relegated to history. The cleaner who had been overlooked had become the leader others looked to for guidance, proving that sometimes the most qualified person for a job isn't the one with the most impressive credentials, but the one with the clearest vision, even when that vision must operate in the darkness, guided by knowledge, training, and the courage to act when others might hesitate. That was her legacy, and it would continue to grow with each person who learned to see beyond titles and positions to the true value that existed in every perspective, every experience, every individual who refused to remain invisible when something important needed to be seen. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.